Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. U.S. President Donald Trump has extended his deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, saying Washington will hold off striking power plants in the country for 5 days. He also said talks between the U.S. and Iran have seen progress, but Iranian officials denied there were negotiations. South Korea has called on Iran to halt attacks on civilians in Gulf countries and to ensure safe navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, during the first phone call between the two countries' foreign ministers since the conflict in the region escalated last month. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has formally labeled South Korea the most hostile state and said the regime's status as a nuclear weapon state will never change, following continued efforts to confront what he described as hostile forces. We begin this morning with the latest on the conflict in the Middle East. The 48-hour countdown for threatened military strikes by the U.S. against Iran's energy infrastructure is on hold. President Donald Trump has ordered a 5-day suspension, citing preliminary negotiations with Tehran aimed at resolving the ongoing conflict. Iranian officials, however, deny that any talks are taking place. Our Kim Do-yeon has the latest.
U.S. President Donald Trump announced a sudden shift in military plans against Tehran on Monday, saying that talks between the U.S. and Iran have seen progress. While Iran denied that discussions had taken place, President Trump ordered a 5-day postponement of threatened attacks targeting Iranian energy infrastructure. Trump had given Iran 48 hours to reopen the Strait of Hormuz or face attacks on its power plants, but has shifted his stance as that deadline approaches.
I think there's a very good chance we're going to end up in a deal, and so we're giving it 5 days, and then we're going to see where that takes us.
The U.S. leader indicated that initial contact could pave the way for a permanent resolution to the ongoing conflict and address Washington's core demands.
So we are now having really good discussions. They started last night, a little bit the night before that, and I think they're very good. They want peace. They've agreed they will not have a nuclear weapon.
The suspension is being closely watched by U.S. allies in the region. After a call with President Trump, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu emphasized that any diplomatic outcome must secure his country's strategic goals.
President Trump believes there is a possibility to leveraging the mighty achievements obtained by the IDF and the U.S. military in order to realize the goals of the war in a deal that will preserve our vital interests.
Tehran, however, remains firm that Trump's claims are fake news, with officials accusing Washington of fabricating the talks to buy time. The Iranian military also dismissed Western intelligence reports about the deployment of explosives in regional waterways and reaffirmed its control of the Strait of Hormuz.
Given this level of control and capability, there is no need to lay mines in the Persian Gulf. However, if necessary, we will use all available means to ensure security.
With the 5-day suspension now in effect, Washington's deadline for a negotiated resolution has been extended to this Saturday. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
And stocks rose and oil prices plunged after U.S. President Donald Trump said further strikes on Iran's energy infrastructure would be postponed pending negotiations. The Dow Jones Industrial Average on Monday climbed 631 points, or 1.38%, while the S&P 500 gained 1.15% and the Nasdaq rose 1.38%. The rebound helped halt a recent market slide, with the Nasdaq having closed near correction territory on Friday. In energy markets, Brent crude fell nearly 11% to settle at $99.94 per barrel, its first close below $100 since March 11th. U.S. crude dropped more than 10% to $88.13 per barrel, after prices had hit their highest level since July 2022 on Friday. And Seoul has called on Tehran to halt attacks on civilians and civilian facilities in Gulf countries and to ensure safe navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. Foreign Minister Cho Hyun said this in a phone call with his Iranian counterpart, Sayed Abbas Araghchi, on Monday evening. South Korea's foreign ministry says Cho expressed deep concern that the worsening Middle East situation is affecting not only the region, but also global security and economy, asking Iran to stop targeting civilians and public infrastructure, and to help restore normal global energy supplies. Cho also asked for Iran's special attention and support for the safety of South Korean nationals in the country. He noted that many vessels, including South Korean ships, are currently anchored in the Strait of Hormuz and requested necessary safety measures from the Iranian side. Seoul says Araghchi explained Tehran's position, and the two sides agreed to stay in communication. So U.S. President Donald Trump says Iran wants to make a deal, but Iranian officials have denied there were negotiations. For more on this, we're joined today by Mohamed Gouda, professor of Middle East economics at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Professor Gouda, thanks for coming on today.
My pleasure.
So President Trump has extended his deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, saying the United States will hold off striking power plants in the country for 5 days. What does this suggest about U.S. strategy?
Actually, it shows that there are, in my opinion, enormous economic pressures that President Trump is considering. I mean, definitely the rise in oil prices everywhere, and especially for the U.S. citizens and for his voters. I think this initiates some major concerns with President Trump. So any more strikes, any more escalation in conflict, I think this will even raise the prices even more. And I think U.S. is really, very considerate about this. Globally, global economy and global inflation rates are booming. So it's really one very big concern. This is one thing. The second thing is that it's not really clear what President Trump is actually asking, to be honest. The idea that the Strait of Hormuz is closed, well, officially, it's not really closed, right? I mean, Iran is arguing that it's not really closed, it's not officially closed. We didn't declare it's closed. So the end game is still not really clear. I mean, at any moment in time, President Trump can say, actually, it's open, it's working fine, but we're not really sure about it, you know. So the problem is that with all this escalation and with all this conflict, we don't have a clear end goals, even with the small footsteps towards that end goal. If there is any end goal, we are not really sure how this works. So I think this raises many concerns, and this raises many issues that we need to consider in the next few days. We'll see how this proves to be working or not.
Right. And in response to Trump's 48-hour ultimatum, Iran threatened to hit U.S.-owned energy facilities across the Middle East if Washington attacks its power plants. So how is Iran trying to shape the course of this war?
I think Iran, it's like, for Iran now, it's do or die. You know, they don't have any other chance. They don't have any other ultimatum. This is like, this is the end of their regime. So they are doing their best to remain in power. We have also to consider that Iran also have escalated and have said that they can actually attack desalination water stations in Gulf countries. We have to remember that Bahrain and Kuwait, for instance, 100% of their water comes from this desalination stations. So this is really very, very dangerous. And we are talking here about major war happening in the Middle East, a major escalation. Iran, by waging more problems and having this kind of escalation, I think it knows this is also, the tides are not in its favor. And they are doing their best to make everybody suffer because of that. So far, of course, this is a very strategic game, because at the end of the day, this global pressure, global economic pressure that we're all suffering from will be a major concern and major, I would say, determinant of U.S.-Israel next steps in this conflict. Because if we have more economic problems, I think U.S. and Israel will consider this, especially for their constituencies. for their voters in Israel and for the US. So I think Iran is trying to play this, and it's still not clear how this is going to end. But I mean, so far it's clear that Iran is now in a very dire situation and a very stressful situation.
Right, and the situation is also very serious in Lebanon, where more than 1,000 people have been killed there by Israeli strikes and more than 1 million people have been displaced. Is Israel preparing for a large-scale ground invasion of Lebanon?
Thank you so much for this question. This is something actually that's not really covered a lot in the media, I have to say. So thank you for pointing this out. I think over 1 million people were relocated in Lebanon. They are moving away from also conflict and escalation and so on. So this is a major concern also in the Middle East. Regarding your question, to be honest with you, it's very hard to know for sure. But one thing I know for sure, one thing that has been promised by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, that he is reshaping the Middle East. And actually, he's doing it. He's reshaping the Middle East right now. So this is why we have to take what Israel's Prime Minister words. We have to take this very seriously. I think Israel will seize the moment to reshape the Middle East, to make its best out of this moment. It's a really favorable time for Israel with the presence of President Trump in power in U.S. So I think Netanyahu will definitely use this chance, seize the moment to reshape everything and to make Israel reach its best, I would say, best secure dominance so far. So in my point of view, my humble opinion, I think this will happen. I think President Prime Minister Netanyahu is very smart, and he will do his best to secure Israeli interest for a long time.
I see, and the war is now already in its 4th week, right? Some say it won't produce a decisive victory for either side. What's your take on this? How do you think this conflict might end?
Yeah, it's very hard, actually. It's very hard. Actually, when we are, tracking President Trump's talks and speeches and so on, it's even very hard to know exactly what's his end game, right? So his speech and his remarks are sometimes very contradictory. On the one hand, he's talking about like destroying Iran, destroying the regime, killing the Ayatollah, toppling the regime. And then the second time, and then after a few days, we're talking here about negotiations, or peace negotiations. That means he's really accepting the regime, and he's accepting the authority of whatever Mujtaba Khamenei is, if he still exists, if he's still alive. So it's really very contradicting, and it's very hard for anybody to know what really happens behind the curtains. One thing that's I think we have to be sure about is that this war is going to end by the words of President Trump. That's it. This is the only thing. And whatever he declares, we will take it as de facto. So this raises a major concern, because President Trump is always changing his speeches and attitude. So we will have to wait and see, but it's really very hectic and very chaotic in the Middle East. And I hope this conflict ends soon, and I hope things settle soon, and we have more secure and more peace in the region in the coming few weeks, hopefully.
Right. We'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Gura, thank you so much for your time and insights this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has declared South Korea the regime's most hostile state, warning of harsh retaliation if Pyongyang is provoked. The remarks came as Russia's Vladimir Putin congratulated Kim on his re-election, signaling deepening ties between Moscow and Pyongyang. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has formally labeled South Korea the most hostile state and warned of merciless consequences if Pyongyang is provoked. According to the Korean Central News Agency on Tuesday, Kim made the remarks on the final day of the first session of the Supreme People's Assembly, declaring that Seoul has now been officially designated as North Korea's principal adversary. He warned that South Korea would pay the price for any provocation and reaffirmed that North Korea's status as a nuclear weapons state will never change, vowing continued efforts to confront what he described as hostile forces. The comments came as Kim secured a third consecutive term as chairman of the State Affairs Commission, the country's top policy guidance body created in 2016. His re-election was confirmed during the parliamentary session held on Sunday. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin congratulated Kim on his re-election and expressed hope for deeper cooperation between Moscow and Pyongyang. In a message released by the Kremlin on Monday, Putin praised Kim's role in strengthening what he called a friendly and allied relationship between the two countries, adding that continued collaboration would serve their fundamental national interests. Ties between Russia and North Korea have strengthened in recent years. The two countries signed a mutual defense treaty in 2024, and North Korea has sent troops to support Russia's war effort in Ukraine. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov also said Kim has a standing invitation to visit Russia, noting that Moscow would welcome him once diplomatic channels finalize the timing. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
On the local front, President Lee Jae-myung chaired a high-level defense meeting and called for stronger defense capabilities as geopolitical uncertainty continues to grow. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yu-jin reports.
President Lee Jae-myung has again underscored the importance of strong self-reliant defense capabilities.
그리고 이 국방은 누구에게도 맡겨서는 안 될 우리 스스로가 완벽하게 최종적으로 책임져야 될 핵심입니다. 우리가 어떤 상황이 처하더라도 누구의 도움도 받지 않고 스스로.
Lee presided over the first Central Integrated Defense Council meeting of his administration at the Blue House on Monday. The council convenes officials from the government, the military, and the civilian sector to assess the country's defense readiness and review key policy outcomes. Under South Korean law, it must meet at least once a year. There, President Lee described self-reliant defense as the key to South Korea's defense system, citing an, quote, increasingly complex and rapidly changing geopolitical environment.
민, 관, 군, 경, 소방 등 모든 방위 요소가 유사시 한 몸처럼 일사불란하게 대응할 수 있어야 국가와 국민을 지켜낼 수 있습니다.
He called for being better prepared so the country can defend itself under any circumstances, but while also expressing confidence in South Korea's capabilities. Lee noted that the country's annual defense spending is about 1.4 times North Korea's GDP and that its military strength ranks 5th in the world. The president's remarks come as calls for a stronger self-reliant defense have grown recently, especially after reports that some U.S. forces' Korea assets could be deployed to the Middle East in response to the U.S. war in Iran.
국제 질서의 영향에 따라서 외부의 지원이 없어질 경우, 우리의 뜻과 다르게, 우리의 의지와 다르게, 그럴 경우는 얼마든지 발생할 수 있죠.
Also, the Pentagon's latest national defense strategy states that, quote, South Korea is capable of taking primary responsibility for deterring North Korea with critical but more limited U.S. support. The fact that President Lee personally chaired the meeting, typically led by the Prime Minister, highlights his focus on strengthening an integrated defense system. As the situation in the Middle East continues and inter-Korean relations remain strained. Song Mi-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea's producer prices increased for the 6th consecutive month in February, driven primarily by rising global oil prices. The Bank of Korea on Tuesday said the producer price index for February stood at 123.25. This represents a 0.6% increase from the previous month and a 2.4% jump from a year earlier. The central bank attributes this increase to rising global crude oil prices, which rose by more than 10% in February compared to January. Consequently, domestic coal and petroleum products rose 4.0% overall. Specifically, prices for diesel and naphtha spiked 7.4% and 8.7% respectively. Financial insurance activities also surged 5.2%, largely due to higher stock brokerage commissions. On the retail front, BTS fans are fueling remarkable domestic consumption with their purchase of K-pop-related products. Our Kim Jun-ong takes a closer look.
These are characters inspired by BTS members, items that targeted fans visiting Seoul for the concert. Shelves filled with merchandise featuring their photos and names. This is K-Wave, a K-pop specialty store inside a duty-free shop in Myeongdong, one of Seoul's busiest shopping districts.
Items like magnets and puzzles kept selling out, even after repeated restocking. We've also seen a more diverse mix of customers, with more visitors from outside Asia, and the impact extended beyond our K-pop booth to nearby food and fashion sections.
Since early in the morning, fans have been coming in, eager to connect with their favorite artists.
I came to Korea for the free BTS concert. There are many places selling merchandise in Myeongdong, but I prefer this store because it's well organized and has official goods.
Dedicated entirely to K-pop merchandise, stores like this are becoming major destinations for fans visiting Korea. And the impact is visible in the numbers, with a sharp increase in visitors ahead of the concert. Foreign shopper numbers at the duty-free shop rose 32% from a week earlier, while BTS merchandise sales at a K-pop specialty store increased more than fivefold. The impact reached beyond duty-free shops, with spending spilling over into the broader retail sector. At one convenience store chain, sales at 10 outlets near Gwanghwamun nearly quadrupled compared to the same days a week earlier. Stores located closer to the concert venue saw an even sharper increase, with sales jumping more than 6 times. This surge across the retail sector underscores the distinctive nature of fan-driven consumption.
Fan-driven spending is typically more intense, reflecting a stronger interest in Korea than that of general consumers. This demand is also spreading beyond BTS to other products with distinct Korean elements. If the trend continues, it could spread to general overseas travelers through social media, supporting long-term positive spillovers.
ARMY-nomics is now visible in the data, showing how a cultural phenomenon is translating into a tangible economic impact. Kim Junong, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. A new report released on Monday shows that the timing of joint U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran on February 28th was changed by newly surfaced intelligence. According to Reuters, a meeting between Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and top military officials at his Tehran compound was moved from the night of the 28th to the morning, narrowing an already fragile window for a potential decapitation strike. That shift set off an urgent call between U.S. President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Trump had already approved a strike against Iran in principle, but was still debating the timing. Netanyahu pressed that the moment might never return, with intelligence now showing Iran's leadership in one place. Trump ultimately made the call that triggered Operation Epic Fury and killed Khamenei. In the U.S., a passenger jet landing at New York LaGuardia Airport crashed into a fire truck on the runway, killing both pilots. The Air Canada flight collided with the vehicle just before midnight Sunday as it touched down from Montreal. Officials say the fire truck had clearance to cross the runway while responding to another aircraft. Air traffic control recordings capture a last-second warning telling the truck to stop. The impact destroyed the cockpit, killed both pilots, and injured dozens on board and on the ground. Investigators are looking into how runway coordination failed. In Colombia, a military aircraft carrying more than 120 people crashed in the country's southwest. The Hercules C-130 transport plane went down just after takeoff on Monday near Puerto Leguizamo in Putumayo province. Officials say 121 people were on board, mostly soldiers. At least one person died and 77 were injured, with rescue efforts still ongoing. Authorities say the aircraft went down just 2 kilometers from the airport, but they have not confirmed the cause. Colombian pop star Shakira will perform in Madrid this September, building a custom venue for tens of thousands of fans. Organizers say the singer will stage 6 shows in September at a purpose-built site holding up to 50,000 people. The venue will be built at Madrid's Iberdrola Music Grounds on the city's outskirts and will operate under the name Macondo Park. Promoters say the project will center on Latin culture.
Spring is really settling in now. Yesterday, Seoul climbed above 20 degrees Celsius, meaning there was no need for a jacket to go outdoors. Well, today will be slightly cooler but still mild with a high of 17 degrees Celsius here in the capital. In fact, this week will feel more like late April. Meanwhile, the air is getting drier. Dry weather alerts are being in place across many regions, including here in the capital. And with the risk of wildfires increasing, extra caution is needed. Also, air quality continues to be a concern. With stagnant air in addition to dust moving in on northeasterly winds, skies will remain quite hazy today in most parts of Korea under lots of clouds coverage. And this afternoon, highs in most parts will be in the upper teens, getting up to 17 degrees here in Seoul, Gwangju, getting up to 20 degrees Celsius. Then rain will begin late tonight on Jeju, spread to the southern coast early tomorrow morning before tapering off during the day.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.